the more powerful identity is the one you have with yourself. The way you've defined yourself really controls you. And so it can be to your advantage. Lance Armstrong has, he had an experience. Think about this. He was one of the greatest, most recognized athletes in the world, did things no athlete had done as a cyclist in history, brought great fame to America. But right before this, he had this mindset that I'm the champion. I always find the way to win. That's his mindset. Problem with that is he'd do anything to win, including break the rules around doping. And so now that's harmed his identity, career, life, and direction. But it sure served him when he got cancer. Because if you remember, some of you may not recall, the live strong is because this man not only developed cancer, one day he showed up at the doctor and the doctor says, I have pretty horrific news. You better sit down. He said, you have cancer in your lungs, little like golf ball size. You have it in your brain and you have it in your testicles. And by the way, any man in your testicles will get your attention. Any form of cancer was that one for sure. But imagine you ride a bike and it's in your testicles. And guess what? They said, you're going to die. Right? He was terminal. But his identity was, I find the way to victory. I'll find whatever it takes. It served him there. He's living still. He's out of cancer. It did not serve him when it went to the rule structures of being a cyclist. So if your thing is I find the way, you're going to find the way. If your thing is I always end up losing, or people hate me, or I put things off, or whatever your identity is, if it's a negative identity, that is what's controlling your life. And you can go to 5,000 seminars and read hundreds of books and do all kinds of crazy things, but unless you shift that identity, you're going to call it sabotaging yourself. But what the brain's really doing is living what you taught it is. We live what we believe we are. So you have to be so careful what you attach the words I am to. And I can remember one of the most powerful days of my life, still in my life, when I was still in high school, and my mom kicked out my father's. My fourth father got kicked out. And now she chases me out with a knife. Again, she wouldn't have killed me or anything, but I wasn't going back in. And I got to support myself. I'm going to high school and I'm living in this person's laundry room. And so I got a job working in these banks in the middle of the night. And so I had to take these buses. I had to go through 3 different buses to get there. It's a long way, about a 45-minute drive. If you were driving straight there in a car with buses, it's about an hour and a half. I'd go and do my work. I'd do 6 hours of work in 2.5 hours. I'd finish 2 in the morning. I'd come back, wait for the bus, get on the bus, do the 3 buses back, get home, usually around 4 in the morning, 3:45, 3:30 in the morning, then try to sleep for 3 or 4 hours and get up and go to school. And I tell you this because one of the most powerful days of my life was I finished doing all the banks, worked like crazy, and then I came outside, it's 2 in the morning, I'm waiting for the bus, and I'll never forget. I'm looking at my watch, no bus, 2:10, no bus, 2:30 a.m., no bus. I don't have a car, I don't want to get home, I got to get home. Where are the buses? And finally, about 2:45 in the morning, a guy pulled over, just driving late at night, and he saw me at the bus stop, and he goes, hey, guy, don't you realize there's a bus strike? The buses had gone on strike that night. So I have no way to get home. So true story, guess what I did? I was so pissed off and angry about, remember we talked yesterday about breakthroughs and what made it possible? How many of you, what made the breakthrough possible is you finally got enough pain where your brain went, no more, I'm changing this freaking thing now. How many of you that's what did it? Raise your hand if that was the trigger. Say I. Say I.
You don't get caught off guard. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. It's your responsibility to plan, to prepare. This is your dream.
As Kurt Vonnegut, one of the greatest authors in modern times, said, when I write, I feel like an armless, legless man with a crayon in his mouth. But he still did it. And that's the kind of thing that you're going to hear from the greats. You're not going to hear that it was easy. You're not going to hear that they felt suave and cool. Even the greatest of all time have that awkwardness and that clumsiness. They're never quite as good as they want to be. But what I want you to understand is even though Kurt Vonnegut said those words, he wrote tons of books that changed people's lives, that changed the landscape of literature, because despite the fact that he felt awkward and clumsy, he kept doing it and forcing himself to move forward, to take one step after another, even when the process was not exactly rewarding. He believed in something. He knew that what he was trying to do would ultimately get better. He knew that if he wanted to accomplish something great, that he had to push through the awkwardness. And that is the very trick to getting great. You just have to do it. You have to go. You have to take that first step. You have to push. You have to drive. You have to strive every time to get a little bit better. You have to strive not to fall prey to your own doubts and insecurities. And as Joe Namath said, if you aren't going all the way, why go at all?
In order to achieve your goals, you must apply discipline, which you have already done, and consistency every day, not just on Tuesday and miss a few days. You have to work at it.
Let me tell you something that is true beyond measure. The struggle is guaranteed. The success is not. The struggle is a guarantee. So you better love what you do on a day-to-day basis. Read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. The only moment that's real is right now. Now follows you. So every time you're doing something, if you're standing and staring and waiting for someone to finish going to the restroom or whatever, you're standing in line at Disneyland, that is your life. That is the sum total of what you are about in that moment. And life is simply a string of those moments. And so you've got to start asking yourself, am I using those moments wisely?
Do you think even with those 5 negative people in your life and this one incredible mentor, do you think you're still going to end up winning? Who's more powerful?
But I was reading a book years ago on preparing for a marathon, and one of the chapters, again, was on the psychology of it, and it said this verbatim, because I'm the memory expert. It said your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk is a program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. And I always tell people that, and now I don't think the brain is like a supercomputer. I think it's a weak metaphor for what it is, because this is like a living computer that could do so much more and has different capabilities. But I would say that your self-talk is important, and it is the program that we will run. And I always tell people to keep it positive, keep it empowering, because your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk, right? And you have to be careful what you say to yourself, because it's this unconscious command. So I would be very careful, like when I get nervous, or I feel like I think some of the most successful people live at the edge of their limits, and they play there also as well. And so whenever I feel in my nervous system, I feel like I can't do it, then I feel like I really must do it, because I feel like how we do anything is how we do everything.
And moreover, you have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too.
Well, here's the question. Here's the thing. There has to be, because you have to keep changing your mind. I think that's what I said last time, and I believe this even more strongly now. I mean, we could sit down with the books and go through, and I could say, here's how my thinking has changed. But if you can't do that about something that you wrote 10 or 15 years ago, you're not alive.
Gotcha.
Right? You have to say, so absolutely there are things.
Change our mind.
Your mind gravitates towards which it is most familiar with. And so if you're really familiar with what you're worried about and what your problems are and your fears are, and that becomes your dominating thinking, I know you've all heard this, but here's the reason why. Your mind loves what's familiar. Okay. And so if you don't go touch dreams, for example, just experience it for a second. For example, we would go down once every 8 weeks. If I did well in business, we really knocked it out. We could find a deal. I had $200. We'd go to the Ritz-Carlton or some hotel, Ocean, and for one day, oceanfront, feel like what it felt like to valet your car. Right? Walk in the lobby. Mr. Milet, welcome back. Right? She'd go get a massage. I'd play a little bit of golf. And just for that day, I'd touch the dream. And then maybe we do it again in a month or two, and again in a month. Just little tastes of it. My mind began to become familiar with it. And more crazy, I started to kind of trick myself into thinking I belonged there. Because we never end up anywhere we don't believe we don't belong, and then we're not familiar with. So there's these things you'd like to do in your life, either visually seeing them over and over again and repeating those images to yourself. That's powerful. But a double whammy is to not only repeat them and see them, but to go see, there's one thing that's a visual stimulus in your brain that makes you want to do something. The triple whammy is if you could see it, touch it, feel it, and smell it. If you allow all your senses to experience something, it becomes far more familiar to your brain. And so I'm a massive massive advocate of touching a dream in any form you can get it, the best of which is actually going and experiencing it short term. If you begin to believe you belong there, you're a little bit better. And so you will not probably produce many things in your life that you've not visited either mentally or literally thousands of times. And so if you want to end up somewhere, you better be visiting them. Those could be dreams, visions, but the most important thing is if you could actually, more powerful, is if you could go touch them short term, massive difference. Drive by the neighborhood, see the cars. If you want to spend your life in service for your church or your community, take a day out every month and actually do it. Know what it feels like for an afternoon to feed the homeless or to do, and you begin to love it and feel it and believe you belong there, more and more chance that you'll be able to do that full time someday.